Globalization Review Part 3. Okay, what were the results of the War of 1812 then? Let's first start with what was the peace treaty that ended it? Treaty of Ghent. Treaty of Ghent. And basically everything went back to the way it was before the war. But that doesn't mean that this war wasn't significant and it didn't impact us. So can anybody give me an effect of the war? Kyle?
Made the U.S. more respected.
Very good. Yeah, it kind of put us finally on the world stage as a legitimate nation. That's why they call this our second war for independence. Amelia?
Helped colonial unity.
Very good. It helped to develop for the first time a sense of nationalism. And that's going to transfer into the art and the literature that comes out following this war. What else? Maya? Huh? No, those had ended back in 1790. So those are done.
End of the Federalist Party?
Yes, it was the end of the Federalist Party because the Federalist Party always had not been in favor of the war. At the end of the war, they even organized the Hartford Convention, remember? Where they were basically proposing things like it should take 2/3 of vote of Congress to declare war and things like that. And so they are seen as very unpatriotic. So this sends us into this era of good feelings when there's only really one political party, the Democratic Republicans. Okay, let's talk about foreign... Oh, the other thing I would add is more of manufacturing. Even though economically it hurt us because of trade, it forces us to develop some of our own manufacturing, which will lead us into our first industrial revolution. All right, so foreign policy during the era of good feelings, which was about from 1816 to 1824. Monroe's president, and he issued a doctrine in 1816 called the Monroe Doctrine. What did that say? Okay, yes, it was a non-intervention, non-colonization policy. It was a message to Europe. Do not intervene in the affairs of our hemisphere anymore, and consider our hemisphere closed to further colonization. So do not intervene in our affairs anymore, and consider our hemisphere closed to further colonization. It was really an isolationist foreign policy. That it's meant to keep us out of their affairs and them out of our affairs so we don't fight more conflicts and wars. We had no way to enforce it at the time. But remember, when we get to the imperial era, it's going to be the justification for a lot of the things we do in Central and South America. Yep?
Was this all of today's America, or was this just where America was of today?
It's all, we said the whole hemisphere. Okay, now, we did expand some during the era of good feelings. So the Rush-Bagot Agreement is what created the border between U.S. and Canada. Still is the longest unfortified border in the world. The Treaty of 1818 set the northern boundary of the Louisiana Territory, which we had gotten in 1803. And that was with Britain, because Britain still has control of Canada. So the northern boundary of the Louisiana Territory is set. It also said we'll share Oregon. Remember, so Oregon Territory, which went all the way up to nearly Alaska, was going to be shared. And then you had the Adams-Onis Treaty, also known as the Florida Purchase Treaty, which gave us Florida.
That was from Spain, correct?
Mm-hmm. That was setting the border between U.S. and Canada in the Northwest Territory. Alrighty, now we're jumping ahead to the next foreign war, so the Mexican War, which was 1846 to 1848. Why'd we go to war with Mexico?
Border dispute.
Okay, a border dispute in Texas. Texas had already been annexed to the United States. So keep in mind, we do not win Texas as a result of the Mexican War. We annexed Texas, And by the way, had Mexico ever really recognized Texas independence? No. So we had annexed Texas, and there was a dispute whether or not the border was the Rio Grande River, like we said, or the Nueces River. Okay? What also is really the real reason behind the Mexican War?
You wanted California?
Yeah, we wanted California and that whole territory out there. We had approached Mexico about purchasing it. They weren't interested in selling it. So this war was a way to win that territory. Remember, Polk sent Zachary Taylor into the disputed territory between Texas and Mexico, and they attacked us. Okay? And it's questionable where exactly that attack occurred. That was the start of the war. And from the very start, people are going to oppose it. Why do some people in the Congress oppose the Mexican War? Maya? Okay, yeah, they saw it as being selfish. Uh-huh.
We should attack weaker people.
Okay, yeah, that was an immoral war. Mm-hmm.
They didn't know if the attack was actually on our land or theirs.
Okay, Lincoln, as a young representative, asked for the spot resolution. Show me the spot where the attack occurred. But all these people, what were they concerned about? What did they see this as a war for? Katie?
Expanding slavery.
Expanding slavery. Right. So you also had the attempt by Senator David Wilmot to pass the Wilmot Proviso as well, which never did pass, but it basically said that any territory we gained from Mexico would not have slavery. And that kind of reignites this whole debate about slavery, that it had kind of been quiet since the Missouri Compromise. Okay, the treaty that ended that war was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and part of that treaty was the Mexican Cession. We get all that territory, California, Arizona, New Mexico, that we wanted. And Rio Grande becomes the southern border of Texas. And of course, the impact of this is the Mexican War is really what ultimately leads to the Civil War. Because of the Mexican War, we now have disputes over this territory that's going to get added. Is it going to be slave or free? Right? Other attempts by the South to add slave territory, probably the most important one to know there is the Ostend Manifesto. That's when President Pierce sent diplomats to talk to Spain about buying Cuba. And when it was broken to the press that this was going on, he had to halt the plan because it caused such an uproar in the North. Because Cuba had plantations, it would be a slave territory. And then in 1953, you had the Gadsden Purchase, which is where we purchased a small sliver of land along the very bottom of New Mexico and Arizona. And that was significant because there was a debate going on. If we build a transcontinental railroad, is it going to go through the north or through the south? And that little sliver of land was necessary to build the southern route. And at that point, we have the continental United States. Okay. Huh?
What year was the Austin Manifesto?
I think that was in 1852.
What was the other one?
1853. All right, which leads us to the Civil War, which is not really a foreign policy thing, but I didn't know what other theme to put it under, so I just put it under this one. Civil War from 1861 to 1865. And on another review, we do trace sectionalism and how that occurs and everything. So what were some advantages, just advantages first, for the North? Tara?
Bigger population.
Very good. Bigger population,
More manufacturing.
more manufacturing. So bigger population, more industry.
You build ships.
Very good. Yep, they're going to have a navy. So more industry, bigger population, a navy,
They had more money.
more money, more railroads. Okay, if you remember, all throughout the 1800s, one of those things that started to cause that sectional divide is that all the transportation was linking the Northeast and the Northwest and leaving out the South.
They had Lincoln.
Okay, they had Lincoln. They had immigrants constantly pouring into the country. They could sign up to serve. What about weaknesses? John?
They didn't really have a cause.
They did not have a cause, okay, which is that really hurts them at the beginning.
Could the border states be part of a weakness because they could like be fear that they lose them?
But the keeping them was really a strong part. Keeping the border states was a strength because that would have given them more railroads, more manufacturing, things like that.
They have strong leadership.
Very good. Yeah, they have strong leadership in Lincoln, but as far as military leadership, they were a mess. Okay.
They didn't have experience with like guns.
Okay, very good. Yeah, they didn't have a lot of experience with like military type things. Okay, let's go over advantages for the South then. AJ? Yes, they were fighting the defensive war. There's only twice that they went north, and that was Antietam and Gettysburg. And that it's easier to fight a defensive war than an offensive war. What else?
They had much more of a cause.
Yes, they were more passionate about the cause. And who did they have leadership-wise? Yes, Robert E. Lee. So they had the better military leadership. What are their weaknesses then? Gage?
They lacked a strong central government.
Very good. Yes, they lacked a strong central government. The Confederate States of America made Jefferson Davis pretty weak.
They had no manufacturing power or very limited manufacturing.
Very good. Yeah, no industry. And they really were counting on cotton diplomacy and Britain to aid them as to be what makes up for their weaknesses. And that doesn't pan out. Cotton diplomacy failed. Okay. All right, that's the end of page 3.